Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Indie Alaska is a groundbreaking series that dives into the lives of people living in the last frontier. Each episode introduces you to colorful characters from around the state. Funding for Indie Alaska is provided in part by Alyeska Pipeline Service Company. Catch the latest episodes at alaskapublic.org.
The National Weather Service.
Hello everyone, and thanks again for joining us here at KAKM for Monday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting tonight's show. On the morning advisory map here, we've got coastal flood warning out for the North Gulf Coast, and or actually the eastern Gulf Coast around Yakutat for tomorrow afternoon for possible coastal flooding in that area. And then there are flood watches out here for the central, northern, southeast coast and panhandle. That's for tomorrow and tomorrow night. That due to the expected 3 to 6 inches of rain expected to fall across that area. And so there's the potential for flooding throughout that entire region. And got a winter weather advisory here for the northern Kuskokwim Valley area, actually to the east and south of Nikolai in the Alaska Range, looking for 6 to 15 inches of snow there through tomorrow and tomorrow night, with the heaviest amounts up along the western slopes of the Alaska Range. And taking a look at the warnings here for the Brooks Range, eastern Brooks Range, east of the Dalton Highway, looking for 4 to 10 inches of snow, and that's in that same Tuesday and Tuesday afternoon and evening time period. So 4 to 6 inches of snow there for the winter weather or winter storm warnings for heavy snow here for the central interior, the Tanana and upper Yukon Valley areas, looking for 6 to 13 inches of snow to fall in that area by tomorrow night or through tomorrow night. And then along the Alaska Range here, winter storm warnings out for that area as well. The wind advisories have been canceled, but looking for as much as 18 inches of snow to fall in the Alaska Range, especially the eastern Alaska Range, again through tomorrow night. And onto the satellite imagery, you can see again lots of moisture here. Southwest flow across the Northeast Pacific, bringing surges of moisture in across the Panhandle today with more rain in that area. Got a cold front here, slowly kind of pushing south and slowly edging its way eastward across the interior. You can see the back edge quite well right through here. Actually, it's a little farther to the east than what this higher cloud deck shows there. It's more along the Alaska Range this afternoon, and then back to the southwest across the Alaska Peninsula area there. And even colder air behind this band of clouds there, but the coldest air aloft is back here out over the northeast Bering Sea, shifting southeastward with scattered showers. Had rain with the warm air pushing northward, had rain up across the Tanana Valley, actually all the way up into the upper Yukon Valley. Old Crow reporting rain earlier today, but winds becoming westerly, temperatures starting to fall behind the front. Some scattered shower activity, especially more numerous here just north of the Pribilof Islands, and then kind of breaking out here as that system pulls to the east. And then you can see the next system there. This area of cold air is going to move southeastward. This system will pull up to the northeast, and they'll both interact and develop quite an intense storm over the Kenai Peninsula. It'll move into western Prince William Sound during the day tomorrow. And you can see the clouds streaming northward associated with this next system. And again, this area of cold air will come southeastward and work into the circulation of that storm to create quite a storm system. Here's the frontal boundary roughly in this position today, extending back down across the eastern Alaska Range, western Cook Inlet from the central interior. So along in advance of that, mostly rainfall, but the Arctic coast seeing areas of light snow and fog throughout the day, as well as the north slope into the Brooks Range. And then behind the front, the moisture kind of really scatters out to just a few scattered or isolated showers back here over the western interior, up across the Bering Strait area. Again, bulk of the shower activity back here toward the Pribilof Islands, shifting to the southeast. Showers and rain over the Alaska Peninsula, drying out back to the west. And again, several surges of moisture moving northeastward here, keeping the southeast and North Gulf Coast areas quite wet. Rainfall amounts ranged from, well, for south central Alaska, anywhere to half an inch or more in the last 24 hours, while the southeast coast, Juneau had just under an inch of rain. Sitka had over an inch and a half of rain, and Port Alexander, just south of Sitka there, had nearly 2 inches of rain all in the last 24 hours. And again, heavier amounts, 3 to 6 inches of rain expected over the next, well, for tomorrow and tomorrow night as this system and all that moisture moves into the area. And the forecast for tonight, that low comes northward and the cold air comes southeastward. And this low deepens quite a bit. It's tight pressure field, winds beginning to increase across Kodiak Island along the western Alaska Range, Bristol Bay and Alaska Peninsula. Already today, 25 to 35 mile per hour winds with higher gusts coming from the Bering Strait down across the Pribilofs and into the Alaska Peninsula. That'll continue to increase tonight here, especially over Bristol Bay. And the southerly winds increasing, eventually gale force winds coming into the North Gulf Coast, but rain heavy at times there from Prince William Sound. Actually rain heavy at times from south central Alaska tonight all the way into the northern Panhandle. Areas of rain and gusty south winds through the Copper River Basin areas. And here with that warm front and the warm air spreading northward, the eastern interior looks like there'll be areas of rain, but the colder air back to the west here, that'll develop into a band of snow back to the west and snow up to the eastern Arctic coast, and then another polar low up there northwest of Barrow. That'll spin a trough and some more snow and fog into the western and central Arctic coast back to about Point Hope. Look for a few snow flurries over the Kotzebue Sound area there in the northwest. Scattered snow showers and gusty winds here across from Bristol Bay right up along the southwest coast. More scattered or isolated snow showers in over the western interior areas. And this trough here coming across the top of the high, that'll probably spread some moisture into the Pribilof Islands tomorrow. But this low continues to deepen and move right up near to the Kenai Peninsula or western Prince William Sound. And the warm front's going to pull warmer air back to the west, so that's going to hold the cold air off from moving into south central Alaska until tomorrow night, but it'll come streaming down across Kodiak Island. That's where the initial thrust of this colder air will go, across Bristol Bay into Kodiak Island. Storm warnings are out for the Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay, and Kodiak Island for 50 to 55 knot winds. Gusts to 70 knots in the forecast here for Kamishak Bay. Otherwise, gale warnings out all across the North Gulf Coast with rain heavy at times into the northern Panhandle, looking at south winds 45 knots for Lynn Canal. Lighter winds and rain down to the south toward Dixon Entrance, but still kind of a contrast here. Precipitation across that warm front with rain over the eastern interior, and then snow back to the west and northwest, and it kind of cuts off quite abruptly with maybe some clearing periods over the Kobuk Valley up into the Brooks Range and North Slope areas. And then the forecast for Wednesday, this low weakens and moves off to the east. The front continues eastward with the rain tomorrow night becoming more showery during the day on Wednesday. Numerous showers here over the northern Panhandle and the North Gulf Coast areas. That front moving rain into the southern southeast coast. Looks like a pretty steady rain throughout the day there across the southern Panhandle. Partly sunny conditions as the cold air moves in tomorrow night across south central Alaska. The snow levels will drop to sea level. Could see inch accumulation of wet snow down to the lowest elevations here, Anchorage Bowl and the western Kenai Peninsula areas. Winds still gale force, but losing the storms. Diminishing winds here for Kodiak Island and the Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay area, but still looking at gale force northwesterlies in this area. And then a weak trough coming in as high pressure builds into the west coast, trough and warmer air sliding into the southwest interior for some mixed rain or snow showers possible here over the Yukon Delta and back toward the coast. Should be mostly of a low cloud, fog, drizzle, or light rain variety, but amounts will be quite light. Still some leftover moisture over the Pribilof Islands. and a couple of troughs. This one keeping some snow up over the northeast interior areas with snow showers along the Alaska Range and to the north into possibly the mid-Tanana Valley. Another trough brings more snow into the western Arctic coast areas, possibly as far east as Barrow. And then another storm system entering the western Aleutians and southwest Bering Sea. Gale force winds 40 to 45 knots here out over the western Aleutians, possibly gusts to 60 or 65 miles per hour with rain heavy at times sliding northward there and winds increasing across the central Aleutians, but the rain holding back, maybe making it as far east as Adak by the afternoon hours. Temperatures down across the southeast coast, mostly in the lower to mid 50s today. 54, pretty common temperature there all across the region, all the way over to Yakutat, and 52 at Cordova, 61 at Middleton Island. That was a warm spot in the state today. Otherwise, across the Kenai Peninsula, mostly in the lower 50s there. Talkeetna at 43 degrees. Lower to mid 50s there for Kodiak Island. Gulkana there with the gusty south winds, 55 degrees, and Delta had 55 with those southeast winds, but a cooler 45 at Fairbanks, 49 at Northway. And then back when the winds became westerly behind the front, temperatures cooling into the 30s at Tanana, 35 degrees at Bettles this afternoon with a 21 at Arctic Village, or 21 at Anatuvik. Arctic Village is 28, 41 at Fort Yukon. Upper 20s and lower 30s there across the Arctic coast, and mid 30s, lower to mid 30s here in the northwest, upper 30s for the Seward Peninsula. And off to the southwest, McGrath had 41, Sparivon fell to 31 degrees this afternoon, mostly in the 30s out to the west, but lower 40s along the coast, 40 degrees at Cape Newenham, 43 at Macoriac, as well as the Pribilofs, Adak up to 52, and the Alaska Peninsula seeing mid 40s. Lows for tonight with the clouds, wind, and rain, not much variation. Lower 50s there for the Panhandle. Teens through the Brooks Range and possibly the North Slope, otherwise 20s for the Arctic coast, and upper 20s to lower 30s back over the western and northwest interior with lower 30s along the southwest coast. Again, the colder air coming southward, bringing the 32-degree isotherm right down into northern Bristol Bay. Lower 40s along the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutians. Highs for tomorrow, not much contrast. A few degrees up from the lows tonight there, mostly in the lower to mid 50s for the southeast coast. Warmest in the south and near 50 for the North Gulf Coast, and then lower 40s here over the south central Alaska area down into Kodiak Island with upper 30s in the Susitna Valley. And looks like lower 30s here over the Tanana Valley, although Tanana may push up to 36 degrees. Mid to upper 30s for the northwest interior and lower 40s out along the southwest coast. For flying weather, IFR, again, definitely a solid band of it here from the Kenai Peninsula, northern Cook Inlet across Prince William Sound, the North Gulf Coast, and all of the Panhandle. Another area of IFR up over the eastern interior. Marginal VFR in the forecast for all of the Arctic coast and North Slope areas extending down into the Kotzebue Sound area and the Kobuk Valley, western Kobuk Valley. VFR here in between, then an area marginal VFR with the southeast Bering Sea along the coast there, right down to the Alaska Peninsula. And passes shaping up like this. Anatuvik, marginal at times tomorrow. Same forecast for Adigan, occasional marginal VFR. Lake Clark and rainy, IFR, possibly becoming marginal in the afternoon. Rainy though, IFR for the entire day as well as windy. Isabel, lowest conditions will be on the northern entrance, IFR, otherwise marginal. And for Mentasta, marginal VFR. Tanita looking IFR, as well as Portage. And Chilkoot and White, both IFR. Freezing levels showing 2,000 feet, plunging southward tomorrow on that strong northwest jet south of the Alaska Peninsula, and then curving back to the north. That low center tracking right up this baroclinic zone here, right up into western Prince William Sound. A warm air mass over the southeast coast. And for the icing above 8,000 feet, rime icing over the Panhandle, back in across south central Alaska, but above about 4,000 feet there. Some icing above 2,000 feet over the southeast Bering and Alaska Peninsula. Then a big swath of icing extending up to the northeast there through the interior. And more icing coming in from the west-northwest across the Chukchi Sea. Upper level wind flow showing that upper trough swinging into about this position tomorrow. The strong surface low will be moving up to the east of that, right into western Prince William Sound or the Kenai Peninsula. Strong southerly jet, 120 knots into the eastern Gulf Coast. Northwesterlies about 50 knots, pulling the cold air southward. The main Pacific jet off to the south there, but then recurving back to the north. 9,000-foot wind shows low pressure, southern Kenai Peninsula roughly at this elevation, but strong winds circulating around that 40 to 55 knots, the strongest winds across Kodiak Island. 35 to 40 knot winds here across the southwest coast, and 3,000 feet. Northwesterlies 30, 40 to 55 knots here across Bristol Bay and the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island. 50 knot winds there for the western Alaska Range, and south to southeast 35 knots across the Copper River Basin. Pretty strong winds also here from the south and southeast along and just off the coast of the Panhandle. Turbulence-wise, occasional severe here for the eastern Gulf of Alaska up to the eastern Gulf Coast areas. Yakutat over to, well, staying to the east of Cape Yakataga. Light to isolated moderate chop there for Prince William Sound, Kenai Peninsula, then severe turbulence likely below 4,000 feet here for the western Alaska Range, down across Kodiak Island, the Aleutian Range, and eastern Bristol Bay. After hangar flying, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Mary O'Connor with the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation and the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. On behalf of Alaska Public Media, welcome to Hangar Flying. This evening, we are pleased to have Ms. Kelly Carlson-Atlee back on our show. She is the sister of Dale Carlson, who was flying a Cessna 180 in Prince William Sound on an instrument flight plan when he reported a loss of engine power and subsequently lost communications with Anchorage Center. His emergency locator transmitter and satellite tracking device transmitted his location and a search was initiated. Sadly, his remains were found the next day on Culross Island. Kelly, thank you for being with us here again.
Thank you.
We talked last time on the program about the program that the Carlson family is starting, and they will be providing satellite tracking devices to pilots. We'd like to talk about why you're doing this and a little bit about how the pilots would go about applying for these devices. So what would they do to fill out an application?
Well, first they would go to the Alaska Aviation Safety Foundation's website and they would fill out the application. It's a quick, easy application. There's a few criteria that need to be met. You need to be a private pilot. You need to reside in the state of Alaska. You need to fly at least 50 hours annually. You need to commit to speaking at one event a year about the safety benefits of satellite tracking devices and spider tracks.
I think this is a great opportunity to honor Dale's memory. He was a firm believer, from what the families told me, about always working to increase his proficiency and get another rating and add new skills, and he was very good about staying current. So I think all of your requirements make perfect sense. I would like to add that pilots or anyone who would like to refer a pilot to the information for the application, they can go to www.aasfonline.org. And the application is available right there online. Can you tell us about when the deadline for the applications would be?
Yes, so the first deadline is actually coming up in the next couple weeks. It's October 5th, and that scholarship will be awarded at the Winter Safety Seminar in November. The second deadline is February 15th, and that scholarship will be awarded at the Airman Show in May.
And we look forward to working with the Carlson family. There are a group of partners that are working to carry out this program. We have Spider Tracks involved, the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation, Northern Lights Avionics, and also the Alaska Airmen's Association are involved. And we will have representatives from each of these partners on the committee that does the actual deciding. Do you know how many of these devices might be awarded?
You know, it all depends on the funds that are available. We are setting fundraising goals every year and of course hope to achieve those goals. We have an account set up in the Memorial Fund, in Dale Carlson Memorial Fund name at First National Bank of Alaska, and we hope to do as many as possible.
And I really like the idea that there's no limit on the number of devices, but also that the winners are going to be asked to go out and speak about the advantages of having spider tracks. That was another thing that Dale absolutely believed in.
Absolutely.
And I think to carry on a lot of his ideas about safety, this is a great way to do it.
Absolutely. It's a great way to honor him and to carry out his wishes.
So we really appreciate the family coming together and initiating this program. We firmly anticipate this to be an annual process.
We are looking forward to that as well, and we're really fortunate to be part of a great group. The whole community has just really come together to make this possible, and we appreciate that.
Well, we really appreciate you working to turn something negative and very sad into something positive for other pilots and helping to keep them safe.
That was very important to Dale's wife and his son, and to my mom and dad and brother as well.
That is a wonderful legacy to leave, so thank you for doing that. Thank you for being our guest, and again, my sympathies to you and your family.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions about the SpiderTrax devices or the application process, in addition to going to our website, you're also welcome to contact the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation at aasfonline@gmail.com. We appreciate the Carlson family allowing us to be a partner in this program with them, and we're very grateful that they've chosen to do something positive to honor Dale's memory. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching Hangar Flying, and until next time, fly safely.
Welcome back. Well, southerly winds, gale force southerlies here all along the coast, 30 to 40 knots, strongest on the north coast there, seas 13 to 18 feet. Small craft advisories for southerly winds 25 to 30 knots there over the inside waters. Lynn Canal south 45 knots tomorrow. And then for Wednesday, those diminish back to about 30 knots, so still pretty windy there for Lynn Canal. South to southeast 25 for the central and southern inside waters. Light northwesterlies here along the extreme south coast. Otherwise, small craft advisories south to southwest winds 25 to 30. And for the North Gulf Coast, gale warnings out, 35 to 40 knot winds there, and south up to 30 knots in Prince William Sound. Back to the west and northwest, northern Cook Inlet, northerlies at 25 knots, northwest south of the Forelands. Then the storm warnings here, northwest 55 with gusts to 70 knots for Kamishak Bay, and storm force westerlies there for Barren Islands, also the east side of Kodiak Island, and a pretty brisk northwest wind for Shelikof Strait. Those winds diminish, but hang on to the gales all around Kodiak Island, 35 to 40 knots. Kamishak Bay across the Barrens, northwest at 40 with seas 13 to 16 feet. But much lighter up over Cook Inlet and swinging around to the north and diminishing for Prince William Sound, but still higher gusts coming out of the western and northern bays. And for the Bristol Bay zone, northwest 40 tomorrow. Gale warnings here, northwesterlies 35 to 40 knots to the Alaska Peninsula. Southwest of Kodiak Island, northwest 50 knots with 17-foot seas. And for Wednesday, northwest 20 here on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula. Still small craft advisories from Cape Sarachev all the way up to Sitkinak northwest at 30, 25 knots for Bristol Bay. For the eastern Aleutians, west-northwest, 20 to 25 knots tomorrow, and then southerlies picking up to about 25 knots out over the western Aleutians. Otherwise, southwesterlies through these, only at 15 knots for the central Aleutians, and then the winds increase significantly on Wednesday. 45-knot winds there for the western Aleutians and southeast for the west central Aleutians at the same speed. Winds increasing to 40 knots for the central Aleutians, otherwise small craft advisories for westerlies at about 25 knots there for the Fox Islands with seas 6 to 11 feet. And for the southwest coast, we've got gales out of the northwest tomorrow south of Nunivak Island, and a little bit lighter there. Northwest 30 knots north of the island, westerlies 25 knots for St. Matthew Island, west 25 for the Pribilofs. And then on Wednesday, much lighter winds, southwest 15 there for the Pribilofs, and lighter winds also across the northern Bering Sea, southwest to westerlies, west 20 for the southwest coast. Up along the Arctic coast, we've got westerly winds at 25 knots here from Wales all the way up to Cape Beaufort and along the western coastal areas, southwest 25 for the central coast, same thing on the eastern coast, lighter, more westerly there off over toward Demarcation Point. And then the outlook for Wednesday, not much change, westerly winds 25 knots here in the west. Along the Arctic coast, a pretty uniform wind pattern, westerly the entire stretch of the coastline at 20 knots with seas up to 7 feet here in the west and then 5 feet along the eastern coastline. And looking at tonight's weather again, this low coming northward deepens quite rapidly into a pretty intense system for this time of the year. Wind and rain increasing, heavy at times along the North Gulf Coast, rain heavy at times, especially over the northern panhandle. And warmer air continues to hold over the southeast interior up probably to just north of Eagle, then the colder air turning it to snow and then cutting off back to the west there to some scattered snow showers, some more snow sweeping into the western Arctic coast and North Slope areas there. Scattered rain and snow showers, increasing winds as I mentioned here for the Alaska Peninsula and Bristol Bay as well as Kodiak Island. And then for tomorrow, that intense low center moves up to the northeast. Again, that's going to pull some warmer air back in over south central Alaska. So the initial surge of cold air will be down across Kodiak Island. Rain heavy at times, gale force winds along the panhandle. And then the cold air comes in tomorrow night for possible snow accumulations at the lowest elevations. Otherwise, rain diminishes for the panhandle. Have a great evening.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.